Hi there, my name is Sasha Jarek, and these are my final reflections for EDDL 511, Introduction to Distributed Learning. Now, before I even start, I should probably tell you that I've had to record this numerous amounts of times, because throughout it somewhere, I've actually forgotten what I was going to say, stumbled over my words, or probably let the occasional obscenity go. So, here I go again. These are the final reflections for Introduction to Distributed Learning. When I first sat and thought about what I wanted to do for the final reflections, I searched through a lot of Web 2.0 tools and gave some thought as to essentially how I wanted to convey some of the thoughts I had. It dawned on me at that point that even though I've posted videos online, I've never actually posted a video of myself, nor have I had a chance to kind of sit and do kind of a reflective video, even though in the past I've gotten my students to do it quite often. So here I go. This is what I'm going to do today for our final reflections. Now, I've actually created a couple little cue cards just as part of that. So here are the final reflections. And I think the best place to start was looking at the actual learning outcomes for the course. So the first one is to differentiate between distance learning, online learning, e-learning, and distributed learning. Now, when I first started the course, the reason I signed up was because I knew this was going to be a growing field. It was something that I was personally interested in. And I had seen a lot of people come through distributed learning environments who were poorly prepared for their professions, or who were just frustrated because they really did want to learn and they felt somehow that they didn't get everything out of it. And essentially I thought probably the best way to learn about online learning was to do it via online learning. That way I could gain the experiences of an online learner while learning about it. So I myself didn't really understand the difference between the different terms. I thought it was simply distance learning. But those first couple activities, especially when we trace the development and the evolution of it over the 20th century, from written format to televised to computer-based to what we see today with Web 2.0, it really made me understand that there are different kind of means of distributed learning, and that overall, a blended kind of learning that incorporates some aspects of traditional face-to-face is probably one of the more stronger ways to go. Now, the second learning outcome for the course was to apply learning theory and pedagogy to facilitate learning in a distributed learning environment. Now, like my colleagues, I imagine that probably don't give a lot of thought to the learning theories that underpin my practice. Quite often, the only time I'm talking about them is when I'm going back over my teacher philosophy or talking to other educators. However, it gives you a chance to stop and reflect back and think about, well, really what ideas motivate me as a teacher, inspire me in a classroom, and actually impact the way I teach. And so going back over them was really important because I found that it kind of reinforced for me why I do what I do, how I teach, and what's important about that. And it was interesting to see how that related to an online environment. I've never really had a philosophy of technology in teaching before, but having done these courses, I now feel as if not only do I have a particular learning theory and style that I incorporate, but I also have a particular philosophy on technology as well. Now, number 3 there is to make decisions about the use of technology to enhance learning in distributed learning environments. Assignment number 2, where we did our enhanced unit design with technology, was a challenge for me. I kind of decided that I wanted to do something different, and I didn't want to base it on what I'd done for 510. And when I sat down and started mapping it out, it kind of created a life of its own, because it made me realize that in order to apply that pedagogy, those learning theories, the use of technology, I really needed to change the approach I took to my planning. And therefore, I found that to be a challenging but very worthwhile experience. Number 4, design a learning activity or unit that integrates technology and pedagogy. So again, that unit itself probably sat in my mind for 2 weeks. I probably didn't get a chance to start on it until the final 3 or 4 days, because for 2 weeks I just went back and forth, trying to wrap my brain around it, trying to think about how this was different than what I had done before. Was I just taking what I did in a face-to-face environment and trying to replicate it for technology, or was I really considering how I was going to use the technology, how it was part of it, how it supported the learning, how it tied back into the theories before I did it? So that unit itself not only gave me a practical example of how to use technology into a unit, but it did change the way I view lesson planning and learning planning as well. Number 5, identify current issues about integrating technology into the learning environment. In the first couple of weeks of the class, when we looked at barriers to learning and distributed learning, and each of us took a topic for an essay to compose, I just found that fascinating, looking at the variety of topics that my classmates looked at. And it gave me a chance to kind of investigate a personal interest of mine, which was how teachers learn via online learning, especially when learning about education. I myself, back in New Zealand, had seen many student teachers come to our school who had done all their training online, and in a distributed learning environment that wasn't established, that was still kind of finding its feet, and these students were lost as soon as they got into a face-to-face environment. And so I thought it would be really interesting to look at how teacher education is dealt with online and through online learning. And it really just opened my eyes to how much use there is for research in these areas. Number 6, apply appropriate strategies for assessing learning in a distributed learning environment. The last couple of weeks, obviously, we looked at Bloom, we looked at his revised taxonomy, we looked at his taxonomy as it applies to distributed learning, we looked at the differences between traditional and authentic assessments, and basically how they fit in. You know, is it the assessment that drives the curriculum, or is it the curriculum that drives the assessment? What kind of things do we need to be aware of? What kind of relationships do we make between those? And can we make sure that in a distributed learning environment that those assessments remain valid, reliable, and manageable for all the parties? Sometimes when you're in a face-to-face environment and you're caught up in the teaching and the relationship you create with your students, sometimes you can see assessment as an afterthought rather than an integral part of the planning process. So that was a real interest of me. And I found that particularly intriguing when I read a lot of people's comments, and they simply said that, you know, it didn't really match their own philosophies of assessment, sometimes what they have to deal with, so it's that precocious balance between the two. And it does make me appreciate the differences between the traditional assessments, the authentic ones, the alternative ones, the problem-based assessments, and identifying when might be the most appropriate time to use them. So, what have I taken away from this course, other than all the experiences with our colleagues? Probably, I tried to come up with a little acronym for it, and it's a little cheesy, but most of us are used to face-to-face environments, so I created an acronym, basically said FACE, that works for distributed learning. And that is, for distributed learning to be successful, what I've taken from this course is that it needs to be flexible. It needs to be accessible for people. It has to be collaborative in its nature. And the technology we put into it and use can't just be for the sake of having it there. It has to actually enhance the learning in the course. And finally, I think the greatest thing I've taken from it is the importance and the establishments of an online learning community. It wasn't until that reflection we did for the first assignment that I really realized what my role was in the course and how important it was to have that community, to be able to learn from your colleagues and be able to support and throw ideas off of them and work collaboratively with them. Because it really did change the way I viewed the course, the way I viewed the material, and how I proceeded. So those are my final reflections. You know, I'd like to take a moment just to thank all my fellow classmates. I probably learned just as much from you guys as I did from the readings as well. Everyone has such a unique style and approach to it that you can't help but learn from Elise's meticulously well-organized, thought-out papers. Get inspired by Dawn's creativity in her assignments, the way she integrates media, drama, the arts. Gail, I wish I could plan as well as you. Just the mindset you take when planning something is so structured and so thoughtful, I suppose is the best word for it. And Rob, your curiosity and just your adventure to try new things is inspiring. And I kind of wish I had the opportunities that you're afforded at your school to be able to keep learning and expand on your own practice. And finally, just a big thank you to Michelle and Tracy. You guys have been extremely flexible, collaborative, and open throughout the whole process. and your feedback has been invaluable. So this was intended to be a very short kind of reflection that borders on about 10 minutes now. But I was able to get through it without really mucking up, without any kind of obscenities, and so I'll leave it at that. Happy holidays all, and I hope that some of us continue the journey through the remainder of the courses. Take care.